The duties of MPs, the third in my talks on this, will concentrate on an MP's duty to the nation as a whole. An MP, for instance, may think his party line is short-sighted, looked at in the broader national interests, so may want to disagree with his party line or with his constituents for that reason. So duty to nation can clash with what is usually considered the overriding duty to party. Now, duty to nation sounds noble, but the reality is muddier. Party constituent and personal interests are often presented as if they were a duty to the nation, presented in those terms. For instance, the redundancies of workers in heavy industry in the 1980s, Labour said it was a national scandal that it was happening. The Tories said that industrial workers who were put out of work were a necessary sacrifice because you had to modernise old Rust Belt industries. They both claimed a higher purpose in their stance on the contradictory ones. I don't think we need go as far, however, as Dr. Johnson, the 18th century literary figure who said, patriotism is the last refuge of a scoundrel. Perhaps too harsh. Another example of duty to nation, or as an MP might honestly see it, could be in the revolts against the party line. This is particularly interesting when government backbenchers do it. You might say that opposition backbenchers have more freedom and indeed almost a duty to be revolting, at least in the first part of the Parliament, while they're trying to sort out, their party's trying to sort out how they can best present themselves to the electorate. There's usually an internal debate. And anyway, their party leaders don't have the authority of Prime Minister. After all, the party leader of the opposition has either just lost or hasn't yet won an election. The party leader of the Tory party at the moment, young Mr Hague, hasn't won an election. Now, revolts by government backbenchers were very common under the Tories from 1979 to 97, and even under Blair, Labour backbenchers revolted against measures to cut social security to single mothers, and so force them out to work. Sometimes, in the 80s, and quite often in the 90s, the Tory governments were defeated in the House by revolts of their own backbenchers, or to be more precise, a certain number of backbenchers either voted with the opposition or abstaining. There's no other way the Conservatives could be defeated until at least 92, because if all their backbenchers voted for them, their majorities easily outnumbered all the opposition parties combined. Such a defeat hasn't happened yet under Labour since May 97, but who knows? So backbench revolts can be effective. Sometimes they revolt on principle, sometimes for more direct electoral reasons, if they think that government policy is going to cause them to lose their seats. Conservative revolts against the famous poll tax or community charge in 1990 is a good example of that. They thought their government was pressing ahead with a measure which would just cause the Conservative Party to be defeated in the next election. In 1990 then, Tory MPs took the side of their local Tory-controlled councils against the poll tax in opposition to the Prime Minister, Mrs Thatcher. When there is a big majority for the government, e.g. the Conservatives 1983-92 and Labour from May 97 to the present, effective opposition, it is paradoxically argued, can only come from the ranks of its own backbenchers. The government will listen to them because the government depends on them for their majority. And the backbenchers will defend at least the interests of the people who vote for the government party and so have put it in power, and whose support must be retained at the next general election. The official opposition, by contrast, is usually a demoralised rump, even a rabble. You could say Labour was like that between 1979 until some point, at least 1986, a lot of the time. And the Tories are very much like that now. And the hardcore voters of the opposition parties, which is what a badly defeated opposition is left with, are people who wouldn't vote for the governing party anyway, so why should the governing party listen to the opposition? Interestingly, though, smaller opposition parties, are sometimes listened to more than the official opposition, because they are sometimes conceived as sort of direct rivals to the governing party. The alliance in the mid-1980s, for example, was feared by the then Conservative government more than the official Labour opposition was. But anyway, the votes of all opposition MPs combined cannot bring down a government with a big majority, but if some government rebels combine with the opposition, the government can be defeated. In fact, this can also be done if government MPs simply abstain. As a result, the government often makes quiet, unpublicised policy concessions to its own backbenchers. Another duty to the nation, which is also unpublicised, a lot of MPs' work in Parliament can often be cooperative and essentially non-party. MPs can often agree on certain measures, i.e. to better protect the countryside. And MPs also have to help Parliament to do its job by simply playing the game and taking part in debates and obeying the rules of debate. These activities per se are not publicised much because the media likes bloody and hysterical and noisy clashes. You know, it makes for exciting reading on television. I'll look finally at the national interest in relation to the constituency interest. If there's a clash, MPs can side either with or against their constituents or their party leadership via conviction or career hopes. From their leader they could get patronage, jobs. Also, however, an MP is a representative, not a delegate, as the 18th century thinker Burke said. That means he's not just a ventriloquist dummy for what his constituents think. Indeed, Burke said that an MP is a professional politician, therefore you're electing him to use his judgment, just as you might, shareholders might elect a managing director to use his judgment in business, or you go to a doctor or a lawyer. It's a bit like that. Nor is an MP a glorified local councillor. He should really spend more time dealing with national than local issues, although in practice there has to be a compromise. Nevertheless, MPs are selected and may be deselected by their local party committees. An MP who offends his local party too much is likely to be deselected. So there is a balance to be maintained there.